This module explores ways to keep students engaged in learning through instructional pacing. It is based on a professional development presentation by the Davis School District in Farmington, Utah, and has been modified by Beth Luttrell to include strategies in the San Mateo Foster City School District Teacher Induction Program. Let's start by considering this question. Have you ever been in a class or meeting that seemed to drag on forever, or one that seemed to pass in a flash? This is probably because of the pacing of the meeting or the class. Simply put, pacing is the speed at which we move through a lesson, or the rate of delivery for different parts of the lesson. Good pacing gives students the illusion of speed. Pacing is the skill of creating a perception that the class is moving at just the right speed for students. Generally, this will mean that the lesson appears to unfold more quickly. Students see any change as an indicator or marker which helps them gauge the speed of the lesson's progress. A good pace helps students feel like they are moving along. One way to create the illusion of speed is to use a variety of activities to accomplish a single lesson objective. And by moving from one to another throughout the course of the lesson, you're changing the pace. Changing the type of work or activity, the method of presentation, or the way students are grouped creates interest and increases the pace. Changing topics too often, however, can create confusion in the classroom and be distracting to students. So stay with the topic, but change the instructional strategies often and have students interact very often. There is a lot of conflicting advice about the length of a student's attention span. Some examples from experts include the following. You could take the age plus 2 rule, which states that a student's optimal attention span is equal to his or her age plus 2 minutes. So a 13-year-old can pay attention for about 15 minutes at a time. Another rule insists that attention span is about half of the student's age. Other advice suggests 3 activities each hour. And yet another is that teachers should never do anything for more than 10 minutes. Finally, some experts would assert that there is no such thing as an attention span at all. If we feel something is interesting, it's easy to pay attention. When something's not interesting, it's difficult to pay attention for too long. The same student may have a different attention span depending on the situation. We all know students who can play video games for hours, but only focus on some class lectures or activities for a few minutes. Let's use that knowledge to change our practice. For many students, a change is as good as a rest. Students are rejuvenated by the novelty of a change. How many changes should there be? Well, that depends on the demographics of the class, the topic they're studying about, and the skill of the teacher. Effective teachers plan periodic changes of activity or format in their lesson in order to refresh students' interest without disrupting the flow of the content. For example, an interactive lecture will both hold the student's attention and provide a rest through change at the same time. Interactive lectures are direct instruction in which the teacher inserts into the lecture student-centered activities. These activities provide students with the opportunities to work directly with the material the teacher has presented. They allow students to apply what they have already learned and give them a context for upcoming lecture material by scaffolding or building background knowledge, which is essential for language learners. It's crucial that students become engaged in the material or activity during the breaks as well as engaged with each other as co-learners. By using partnering protocols with a scaffold of sentence frames that embed language objectives in academic language, students engage in English language development while learning content in all disciplines. The more often students engage, the more content they will learn, and the more opportunities for oral language that develop language skills in all students. The challenge for teachers is to break up the information they want to present or the steps to master the skills they are teaching, sometimes referred to as chunking the lesson. If the teacher goes through the process of breaking up the material into bite-sized pieces of learning, students are better able to grasp and master the content or steps in the skill development. Some chunks of information can be taught, developed, or practiced in the student-centered portions of the lessons. Others that are more effectively or efficiently taught using direct instruction can become very short lectures. These are sometimes called micro-lectures. A micro-lecture refers to the practice of a very focused, clear, and effective chunk of direct instruction that occurs in mere minutes or even less, rather than through lengthy lectures. These tiny bursts of information presented in a lecture format are followed by student-focused activities. The pace of the class in this way feels brisk rather than slow, as students get perhaps 1 minute of lecture, followed by an activity that deepens and applies the new learning of content or skills. For example, in a lesson on the different layers of the Earth, a science teacher might give a micro-lecture on the composition and characteristics of the crust. Then the students work in small groups to find and outline the same elements for different layers, such as the mantle, outer core, etc. This could be followed by an activity in which students use a graphic image to check their answers or to develop further questions before a final micro-lecture on the related topic. There is learning theory that suggests that what we learn first in a lesson is what we remember best. What we learn last in the lesson is what we remember second best. The information in the middle, referred to as downtime, is what we remember least and should be used for a brain break. During these breaks, students should practice and apply through review, discussion, or application of skills as they deepen understanding of content, and develop language skills by scaffolded interaction with their peers. You can magnify the effect of your lesson by breaking it into chunks so that the students encounter multiple beginnings, middles, and ends with application and practice related to each part of the lesson. One best practice method is to make the breaks between the various activities crystal clear to the students. Ensuring that activities begin and end crisply and cleanly rather than melding together can have a positive effect on pacing. Because beginnings and endings are perceived by the students as reference points in the lesson, making sure that they are clear to the students helps them sense that the lesson is moving along and gives them a positive sense of pace. This technique has been referred to as bookending because learning segments are clearly marked by the teacher. You can increase learning by reminding students of what has just been learned or what is about to be learned, giving them a very clear timeline. For example, in 3 minutes you will, or you have 90 seconds to, or in the next 10 minutes you will practice. You will need to pay particular attention to the transitions when you have a multifaceted lesson. Teach the procedure for a transition and practice it often in the beginning of the year, or whenever transitions begin to be sloppy or time-consuming. And when your lesson includes more varied activities, advanced planning and organization of the classroom materials is essential. In summary, good pacing means students recognize they are learning and feel as if the material is moving fairly quickly. Remember to plan learning with a variety of activities of different formats in mind. Be sure to include English language development and academic language scaffolds that will improve the understanding and application for English learners. Don't give long lectures. Give interactive lectures. Chunk learning by using micro-lectures combined with student-focused activities. Make the beginnings and endings of learning activities very clear to students. Remind students of what they have learned and what they're about to learn. Plan for transitions, teach and practice the procedures for transitions, and have all materials ready so that the flow of the class, the pace, is not interrupted.